Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin now.
What up? Oh, for sure.
Hello everybody,
How are you? I hope everybody is well. I hope you've all had a fantastic weekend. And I hope you've all had a good day. And I hope if you're in the UK at least, you've been enjoying these last 2 days of weather. I know I have. I've been getting out there trying to do some exercise out there in the sunshine while we've got it. Because I'm not sure how long we're going to get it. We're going to have it for, to be honest. Isn't that always the way with the UK? Hi everybody, over on TikTok. So if you're on TikTok, like I said to you in the prelim, you'll just be able to see the green screen behind me, or I'm off to the side anyway. But on other platforms, you'll be able to see behind me what I'm talking about. And we're going to be talking about a couple of things tonight. We're going to be catching up on something that I've been talking about quite a lot recently, and something that the mainstream media don't talk about, or at least have been suppressing, and that is the Hunter Biden laptop story. Now, just to give you a recap of the Hunter Biden laptop story, it's about a week, 10 days before the election in the United States, we got wind that there was a laptop had been left in a repair shop somewhere, and allegedly it belonged to Hunter Biden. And there were rather salacious things on the laptop with regards to Hunter having problems, shall we say. Now, personally, I'm not that bothered about whether somebody's got a drug addiction or anything like that. I've had addiction in the past. It's not nice. And it's a health issue rather than anything else. But there were other things on that laptop that seem, well, some of them seem depraved, to be quite honest, and I'll get into that more over the coming days. But I just wanted to recap on an article that came out in the Mail last week. My second screen gone. Just bear with me a second. I seem to have lost my second screen. There it is. Aha, I got you back. Okay. So, we need to recap on this story in the Mail, because this is rather important, and I'm not sure how many ears or how many eyes have seen this or heard what is actually in it. Because you all need to hear what's in it. We all do. If this had come out before the election, who knows what would have happened. And this was disgraced, this story was. This laptop and the stuff in it was disgraced by 50 members, by 50 Intel members of the intelligence community over in the US. And the story was suppressed to the degree where you couldn't share it on Twitter, to the degree where the New York Post, who broke the story, were locked out of their Twitter account. And we're finding out now that everything in that laptop actually was true. And it was found in a repair shop. So this is the article. Hunter Biden did help secure millions in funding for US contractor in Ukraine specializing in deadly pathogen research. Laptop emails reveal, raising more questions about the disgraced son of the then vice president. So this is back in 2015-ish. Hunter Biden is on the board of Burisma, which is a Ukrainian company, and his father is then vice president, and he's Obama's point man on all dealings in Ukraine. The first things that happens is Hunter magically gets a job on the board of one of the biggest energy companies in Ukraine. Not dodgy at all. Doesn't sound dodgy at all, does it? Doesn't sound like a banana republic at all, this doesn't, does it? So, stuff in that laptop seems to suggest that Hunter Biden did help secure funding for what we're finding out are biolaboratories in Ukraine that the US was funding. We'll get into it. The Russian government held a press conference on Thursday. This is last week. Tuesday now, so this is about 5 days ago. Claiming that Hunter Biden helped finance a US military bioweapons research program in Ukraine. However, the allegations were branded a brazen propaganda ploy to justify President Vladimir Putin's invasion and sow discord in the US. You're going to see this a lot. A brazen propaganda ploy. I'm surprised that the allegations weren't branded, what are they calling it? Straight out of the Putin playbook. Because that's what they're saying for everything else. It's straight out of the Putin playbook, this is. Really? What is? Where is this playbook? Doesn't straight out of the Putin playbook actually mean anything that you don't like or anything that you want to say that he's guilty of? Isn't that the case? Anyway. Emails and correspondence obtained by the Daily Mail from Hunter's abandoned laptop show the claims may well be true. The emails show Hunter helped secure millions of dollars of funding for Metabiota, a Department of Defense contractor specializing in research on pandemic-causing diseases. I want to remind you what Victoria Newland said, remember in the press conference in one of my live streams last week, when she said these are biological medical research facilities. Very careful of the wording. Well, the emails show that Hunter Biden helped secure millions of dollars for funding for a company that specialized in research on pandemic-causing diseases. It's interesting, isn't it? He also introduced Metabiota to an allegedly corrupt Ukrainian gas firm, Burisma. So he's the link man. While he's on the board at Burisma, he's the link man from Metabiota, going through a box of rats, climbing all over each other. For a, quote, science project involving high biosecurity level labs in Ukraine. The president's son and his colleagues invested $500,000 in Metabiota through their firm Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners. Rosemont Seneca, I seem to remember from my previous the previous stuff that I've reported on that Rosemont Seneca was John Kerry's son's. That's the one that he was involved in. I think I've got it written down somewhere. Just bear me a second. I think it was John Kerry. I want to get that right. Come back to it. Maybe it's actually in this article. Actually, they raised several $1 million in funding for the company from investment giants, including Goldman Sachs. So this is Hunter Biden, and I think it was John Kerry's son who was in the firm Rosemont Seneca. I think I'm right in saying that. Please, if anybody knows anything different in the chat, let me know. But they invested $500,000 in Metabiota, this firm that Hunter Biden is then linking them to Burisma and to these biolabs to get funding in these biolabs. And it's a Department of Defense contractor specialized in research on pandemic-causing diseases. So they're setting up the deals and then investing the firm, knowing that this company is going to get all sorts of, and their shares. You see what I... Can you see the... Well, I mean, this is just... It's blatant insider trading, I would charge. Certainly what it seems like to me. Moscow's claim. So obviously this has all come through Russia and from this Russian press conference last week, which means it's straight out of Putin's playbook and it's Russian propaganda. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. Moscow's claim that Hunter Biden helped finance a US military bioweapons research program in Ukraine is at least partially true, according to new emails obtained exclusively by the Daily Mail. The commander of the Russian Nuclear, Biological and Chemical Protection Forces claimed that there was a scheme of interaction between the US government agencies and Ukrainian biological objects and pointed to the financing of such activities by structures close to the current US leadership, in particular the investment fund Rosemont Seneca, which is headed by Hunter Biden. Make this a bit so you can see. Intelligence experts say the Russian military leader's allegations were a brazen propaganda ploy to justify President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine and sow discord in the US. Well, did they give you any they give you any evidence to back this up? These intelligence experts. See, that's the thing over in America, isn't it? These intelligence experts, they say a lot. They say an awful lot. They'll sign their stuff to all sorts of people who are saying, this is Russian propaganda. Do you agree? Oh, yes, we'll sign it. but they never provide any evidence to say whether it is Russian propaganda or not. It's false. Here's the evidence to say it's false. It doesn't matter whether it's propaganda, whether it's true or not. They did that with the laptop. These 50 people did it with 51, I think it was, including, I think, 5 former heads of the CIA and FBI. Joe Biden was bragging. Let me check that. I think it's 5 of each. And they just come out and said, no, it's Russian propaganda, having no evidence whatsoever to back that claim up that it was a false story, that it wasn't Hunter's laptop. I mean, this is them helping Joe Biden in the election. Now, you can say, Trump was bad all you like. I would charge, Biden's no different to him. Look at his track record. Look at the decisions being made. Anyway, intelligence experts, in other words, ex-CIA spooks and ex-FBI spooks, who then provided no evidence to back that up. And I wish, you know when Russia make a claim, have you noticed whenever Russia make a claim, the media say, Russia said that blah blah happened, of course they didn't provide any evidence. Where is the Daily Mail here saying intelligence experts say the Russian military's illegal allegations were a brazen propaganda ploy, but provided no evidence to back that up? Do you see what I mean? Even in this article, you can see how there's no consistency here in their reporting. But emails from Hunter's abandoned laptop show he helped secure millions of dollars of funding for Metabiota, a Department of Defense contractor specializing in research on pandemic-causing diseases that could be used as bioweapons. So he's funding this company, who is getting involved in this bioweapons research. It's obviously a Department of Defense contractor, and the sons of these politicians are getting rich off the back of it. Not to mention, it's a bioweapons research facility. You know, I'm pretty sure that Hunter Biden doesn't have a lot of experience in the field of energy. You know, so how he got on the board of Burisma, no idea. I'm absolutely certain that Hunter Biden has not a clue what he's doing when it comes to biological weapons. Anyway, emails from Hunter's abandoned laptop show he helped secure millions of dollars of funding from Metabiota, a Department of Defense contractor specializing in research on pandemic-causing diseases that could be used as bioweapons. Remember, Victoria Nuland said that these were biological research facilities, and then when pushed by Marco Rubio as to whether there was a chemical weapons attack, she said it was certain that it would be Russia that did it. And I at the time were like, hold on a minute, so if they're just biological research facilities and nothing in there is dangerous, why are you worried about Russia getting their hands on them? And secondly, what makes you think Russia will do a chemical weapons attack if there's no chemical weapons in those facilities? Do you see what I mean? Oh, you can turn that into a weapon. Really? I've heard that said. Oh, you can turn a pencil into a weapon. You can turn a paperclip into a weapon. Really? What about stuff inside a biological weapons research facility? Sorry, a biological research facility being funded by a company that is a Department of Defense contractor specializing in research on pandemic-causing diseases that could be used as bioweapons. You see what I mean? What about that? That can be used as a weapon, can't it? So it's obvious here why America was so, or rather the US officials were so sure that it would be Russia that perpetrated a chemical weapons attack. And although Metabiota is ostensibly a medical data company, its vice president emailed Hunter in 2014, described how they could assert Ukraine's cultural and economic independence from Russia, an unusual goal for a biotech firm. So they're pushing whatever, foreign policy the American, unfortunate factions within the American government wanted. here's all the details. I'm just there's lots of emails here backing all this up in the article. The article's in the mail. You should go and read it. Emails and defence contract data reviewed by the Daily Mail suggest that Hunter had a prominent role in making sure Metabiota was able to conduct its pathogen research just a few hundred miles from the border with Russia. Try and imagine that top paragraph I just read out. Try and imagine if the roles were reversed there, if this situation were reversed. Emails and defence contract data reviewed by the Daily Mail suggest that Hunter had a prominent role in making sure Metabiota was able to conduct its pathogen research just a few hundred miles from the border with Russia. Imagine if Vladimir Putin's vice president had a son, and Vladimir Putin's vice president's son was investing in a Russian firm that was conducting pathogen research on the border with America, just over in Mexico. What do you think America would do? What do you think America would do if Vladimir Putin's son was investing and had links in a firm in Mexico that was doing pathogen research at a biological weapons facility? Do you think America would have a problem with that? I think they would, wouldn't they? In fact, we know that they would. I mean, we know what they would do if somebody wanted to put any sort of weapons in Cuba. You know, I think it was, well, I mean, that was of course in response to America putting weapons in Turkey and Italy. People forget that, don't they? Cuban Missile Crisis was a response to Russia, wasn't aggression. The project turned into a national security liability for Ukraine when Russian forces invaded the country last month. Metabiota has worked for Ukraine for Black & Veatch, a US defense contractor with deep ties to military intelligence agencies, which built secure labs in Ukraine that analyze killer diseases and bioweapons. Why are America? Sorry, I say America. You have to understand here, it's not America doing this. It's unfortunate factions within the US government, often factions which are not elected, by the way, have no oversight. Can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? I mean, there's hundreds of facilities around the world. We'll get to this. There's hundreds of facilities around the world in all sorts of countries that this is being done. Why? And why firms that, you know, do bioweapons research? Earlier this month, US officials warned Congress that Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of these biological research facilities, prompting fears that the deadly and even engineered pathogens could fall into Russian hands. So if deadly and even engineered pathogens were being funded by Russia in Mexico, what do you think America would do about that? How would you think they would be unhappy? Again, there's nothing I'm doing here that is sticking up for Vladimir Putin and this invasion of Ukraine. I condemn it wholeheartedly. I think what Putin did was, well, I think he took advantage of the situation. Yeah, he took advantage of the situation. Started, you know, saw it as a resource grab. Can't be sure. Back to this article. Hunter and his colleagues at the investment firm Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners routinely raise millions of dollars for technology companies, hoping the firms would take off and make them all fortunes. This is, I'm sure that this is him and John Kerry's son was involved in this Rosemont Seneca, which then funded this Metabiota, which Metabiota was one of those firms. Emails between Hunter and his colleagues excitedly discussed how the company's monitoring of medical data could become an essential tool for governments and companies looking to spot outbreaks of infectious diseases. The president's son and his colleagues invested $500,000 in Metabiota through their firm Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners. They raised several millions of dollars for funding for the company from investment giants, including Goldman Sachs, who get loads of free money from the government. But emails show Hunter was also particularly involved in Metabiota's operations in Ukraine. Hunter's pitches to investors claim that they not only organised funding for the firm, they also helped it get new customers, including government agencies, in the case of Metabiota. He and his business partner, Eric Schwerin, even discussed subletting their office space to the firm in April 2014. So they've got deep ties. This is not something that can, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't really, I just invested the money, I don't really, and what they normally do is just, whatever, and say nothing and leave you holding, whatever it is that you think you've got on them. But this can't be like, I don't know what was going on there, really, I don't. Well, if you don't know what was going on there, why were you getting paid $1 million a year? If you don't know what was going on, and if you barely had any control over it, why were you getting $1 million a year? And if these emails, I assume now are accurate. It certainly looks like they've been verified. Daily Mail wouldn't have printed this, I don't think, unless they can confirm. This is the president's son that we're talking about here. What do you think about this? Doesn't it sound like they're all corrupt? Certainly does to me. Somebody just said in the chat, but they'll freeze your bank accounts if you protest. They're bringing that in. Meanwhile, this seemingly is all right. The sons of these politicians and daughters just making a fortune off all sorts of companies, including companies that are investing in bioweapons research, seemingly on the border with Russia. So the month that Rosemont Seneca discussed subletting their office space to Metabiota, pretty much saying that those two companies were well linked. That month, Metabiota Vice President Mary Gutierrez wrote a memo to Hunter outlining how they could assert Ukraine's cultural and economic independence from Russia. Why would that be a priority for one of these research facilities? Why would it be a priority for one of these research facilities to be, decoupling from Russia and going to a more westernized way? It's obviously the advantage there is all America, and they're trying to pull it. You can see Ukraine has almost been involved in a tug of war here. Quote, thanks so much for taking time out of your intense schedule to meet with Kathy and I on Tuesday, who was a Metabiota executive. We very much enjoyed our discussion, the email said. As promised, I've prepared the attached memo, which provides an overview of Metabiota, our engagement in Ukraine, and how we can potentially leverage our team, networks, and concepts to assert Ukraine's cultural and economic independence from Russia and continued integration into Western society. Why would a research facility? Obviously, that investment came at a cost in those firms. Do you see what I mean? Former CIA officer Sam Faddis, who has reviewed emails on Hunter's laptop, told the Daily Mail that the offer to help assert Ukraine's independence was odd for a biotech executive. It raises the question, what is the real purpose of this venture? It's very odd. I would suggest that it's a quid pro quo. Yeah, you do that and get the investment. There's more... Science and Technology Centre in Ukraine. Trilateral meetings in Ukraine, Poland, and the United States regional. What is this? So Mary Gutierrez, Metabiota Vice President, is seen at a meeting with the United States and Ukrainian military here. So you can't see this on TikTok, but in this article, there's a meeting here of this Mary Gutierrez, who's the official, the executive from Metabiota, which Hunter's company, Rosemont Seneca, well, Hunter's company and John Kerry. I'm sure it's John Kerry. I'll check that. There she is meeting with the United States and Ukrainian military. Why is she meeting with the United States and the Ukrainian military? And why is Hunter investing? Do you see what I mean? This is one of the Russia's defense ministry on Thursday put out a diagram with arrows connecting Biden's Soros and the Democratic Party to Ukrainian biolab. So the Russians are saying Soros is heavily invested in this as well. Well, there's a conspiracy theory for you, isn't it? I say conspiracy theory. I mean, if they're in the emails, then it's not a theory, is it? I have to review those emails. I haven't read through them. Emails between Hunter and his colleagues at Rosemont Seneca excitedly discuss how the company's monitoring of medical data could become an essential tool for governments and companies looking to spot outbreaks of infectious diseases. Gutierrez had a leading role in Metabiota's Ukraine operations, meeting with other company executives and US and Ukrainian military officials in October 2016. That's the picture I just showed you. Yeah. To discuss cooperation in surveillance and prevention of especially dangerous infectious diseases, including zoonotic diseases in Ukraine and neighbouring countries, according to a 2016 report by the Science of Technology Centre in Ukraine. Zoonotic. That's not bats by any chance, is it? At the time, Hunter was... What does that mean, zoonotic? What does zoonotic mean? Zoonotic. Zoonosis is an infectious disease that has jumped from a non-human animal to human. So yeah, they're talking about possible bats. Are they doing work in? They were doing work on coronaviruses. Damn. At the time, Hunter was serving as a board member of Ukrainian gas firm Burisma, owned by former top government official and allegedly corrupt billionaire Mykolai Zlochevsky. 4 days after Gutierrez's April 2014 email, Burisma executive Vadim Potsarsky, apologise if I got any of these names wrong, wrote to Hunter revealing that the then vice president's son had pitched a science project involving Burisma and Metabiota in Ukraine. Please find a few initial points to be discussed for the purposes of analysing the potential of this new called Science Ukraine project, Hazarsky wrote. As I understand, the Metabiota was a subcontract to principal contractor of the DID B&V, which is Black and VH. I'd just like to ask you all a question, right? I'm halfway through this. I'm halfway through this article. Let me ask you a question. If the roles were reversed here, right? And I'm not talking about with America here, but I'm talking, obviously this is Joe Biden, right? And I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but I am somebody who can use my own eyes and ears. And if you go back and look at my videos, you'll see that I think he was treated unfairly. I think he's an awful, awful person. I really do. But I think his presidency was ruined by the media. And I just want to give you, just ask you really, if any of this that I'm talking to you right now about, you know, this Metabiota and biolab firms in Ukraine, can you imagine if it was Donald Trump Jr. who was doing this instead of Hunter Biden? Instead of Hunter Biden in this article that I'm reading out to you, it was Donald Trump Jr. I want to for you to close your eyes and try and imagine the media cyclone that would be whipped up right now if it was Donald Trump Jr. that they were talking about here instead of Hunter Biden and Burisma and all this stuff. It would be 24/7, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't you have every episode with Rachel Maddow would be like, the walls are closing in, tick-tock, Trump, we're coming to get you, you're going to be in jail. It would be non-stop, wouldn't it? And the fact that it isn't, you have to ask why. Why is this? Is it because the media are lying to us all? Is it because they don't serve you and me? They're not trying to educate us. They're not trying to inform us. They're actually just trying to protect power. Isn't that the case? Quote, what kind of partnership Metabiota is looking at for in Ukraine from potential non-government player in Kiev? Rebuilt the ties with respective ministries in Ukraine and on the basis of that reinstate the financing from BNV. Wait a minute. Okay, let me try and get this. So this is an email from Podsarsky. He said, as I understand, the Metabiota was a subcontract to principal contractor of the Department of Defense, which was Black and Veatch. So the Department of Defense, the work out to Black and Veatch, and then Black and Veatch subcontract that out to Metabiota, which then gets its funding through Rosemont Seneca, or some of it, which is Hunter Biden's firm on the board and John Kerry, as I've mentioned. And all of this goes back to 2015. So this is what Ukraine really, this is what we need to find out about. So the email concluded, it went on. He said, what kind of partnership Metabiota is looking for in Ukraine? That's what he's asking Hunter, from a potential non-governmental player in Kiev. Rebuilt the ties with respective ministries in Ukraine and on the basis of that reinstate the financing from the BMV, or they look for partnership in managing projects in Ukraine, PR, with government institutions here financing the project. Sorry, it's not his email to Hunter. This is just what he said. Fadis told the Daily Mail that the attempt to get Metabiota to form a partnership with Burisma was a perplexing and worrying revelation. No kidding. His father was the Vice President of the United States and in charge of relations with Ukraine. He's the point man to Ukraine. So why was Hunter not only on the board of a suspect Ukrainian gas firm, Burisma, getting $1 million a year in, well, it's not his salary. They'll say, oh, he didn't get paid a salary. Yeah, he got shares and all that sort of stuff. It's $1 million, all right? Stop splitting hairs with your nonsense. He didn't get paid that as a salary. You're splitting hairs. You got $1 million. Shut up. Why was he not only on the board of a suspect gas firm, but also hooked them up with a company working for bioweapons research? A company that he himself, through his firm Rosemont Seneca and John Kerry, were investing in themselves as well. Do you see how this is like, they're just making money hand over fist here. This is a big con, surely. This should not be allowed, should it? None of this is actually looking after a single person in America apart from Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, is it? I mean, none of this is helping anybody in America. None of the people that they're supposed to be working for. These are public servants, by the way. Well, kids of a public servant. It's an obvious Russian propaganda attempt to take advantage of this, but it doesn't change the fact that there does seem to be something that needs to be explored here. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Russia have jumped on this, but wouldn't you? If you were Russia, you would, wouldn't you? This is biological research facilities that were working on the weaponization of pandemic viruses on the border of Russia, funded by the son of a vice president of, well, I mean, the country that pretty much is trying to go to war with you constantly. You would surely want to take advantage of it, wouldn't you? Calling it propaganda? Is that? Okay, all right. The DOD's position is that there's nothing nefarious here. Well, of course not. Of course, the Department of Defense are going to say there's nothing nefarious there. Have a guess why? Is it because the Department of Defense might be in a little bit of trouble? If, you know, it was nefarious what's going on? I think you'll see my point. This is pandemic early warning research, they said. Really? Pandemic early warning research? On the border with Russia? Are you insane? We don't know for sure that's all that was going on. But the question still remains, why is Hunter Biden in the middle of all this? That's the point, isn't it? Whether, you know, we don't know for sure what was going on, what they were researching or anything like that. But the mere fact that Biden's son is involved in the middle of all this, getting paid millions of dollars, making a fortune from companies that he's investing in, with John Kerry's son, knowing that they were going to get massive contracts and they were going to get paid out big. How many times is this happening? I would suggest it's happening like constantly. Why is the disgraced son of the vice president at the heart of this? The guy with no discernible skills and a cocaine habit. I haven't got a problem with him having a cocaine habit. I don't, you know, I think he should seek help, obviously, but it's illness. But, I mean, all of the corruption, all of the seeming corruption, shall we say, I've got a problem with that, haven't you? Patarsky said in his email to Hunter that he had encountered such biological research projects before in his former job as a Ukrainian government official, and claimed that BNV worked, quote, similar or the same projects as the proposed contract for Metabiota. Government spending records show the Department of Defense awarded an $18.4 million contract to Metabiota between February 2014 and November 2016, with $307,000 earmarked for, quote, Ukraine research projects. So Hunter Biden and John Kerry's firm, Rosemont Seneca, have invested $500,000 into Metabiota, and then they have then gone on to get a large contract, an $18.4 million contract from the Department of Defense. Sound dodgy? Good work if you can get it. If you know where the money and where the contracts are going, it's easy to make money, isn't it? You can see why the kids get involved in this. The US Defense Threat Reduction Agency also commissioned BNV to build a biological safety 3 laboratory in Odessa, of course, in Ukraine in 2010. Which provided enhanced equipment and training to effectively, safely and securely identify especially dangerous pathogens, according to a company press release. The reason why, by the way, there are hundreds of these research facilities around the world, but the reason why, obviously, the United States are farming all this research out is because they can't do the research at home. They've banned it. You know? They banned the coronavirus research. Obama did. That's why the NIH then had to go out and fund labs, including the Wuhan one. They couldn't do the research back at home. It's too dangerous. So what a better way to do this research, better place to do this research than on the border with your enemies. Get it all the way over there. Which provided enhanced equipment and training to effectively, safely and securely identify especially dangerous pathogens, according to a company press release. Such laboratories are used to study infectious agents or toxins that may be transmitted through the air and cause potentially lethal infections, the US Department of Health and Human Services says. BNV was awarded a further 5-year, $85 million contract in 2012. Some more emails backing up the reporting. Oh, this is sick. So this email here, in another sign of the deep ties between Metabiota and the Department of Defense, Hunter's RSTP business partner, Rob Walker, said he would have a friend reach out to the Department of Defense on the down low in order to prove the company's bona fides to top prospective investors, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, in October 2014. So it's like, I'll get my pal in the DOD to reach out to Morgan Stanley and the people who are funding this, just to say, yeah, this Metabiota, they're solid. They're solid. They're the one. They're the one. RSTP was a subsidiary of Rosemont Capital, an investment company founded by Hunter and former Secretary of State John Kerry's stepson, Chris Hines, in 2009. I apologise, it's not John Kerry's son. John Kerry's stepson. Sorry. Metabiota also has close ties to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, suspected to be the source of the COVID-19 outbreak. Go read that again. Metabiota, who Hunter Biden and John Kerry's stepson were their firm were investing heavily in, $500,000, also has close ties to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, suspected to be the source of the COVID-19. I'll just let you digest that information. That was the hotspot for the controversial gain-of-function research that can create super-strength viruses. Of course, I mean, you know, dangerous. That's why you do it abroad, isn't it? You know, places where, like China and Ukraine, where there are, you know, less rules. And both of those countries border Russia. Interesting. Chinese scientists performed gain-of-function research on coronaviruses at the WIV, working alongside a US-backed organisation, EcoHealth Alliance, that has since drawn intense scrutiny over its coronavirus research since the COVID-19 pandemic. I've reported on this before. Researchers from the Wuhan Institute, Metabiota, and EcoHealth Alliance published a study together in 2014 on infectious diseases from bats in China, which notes that tests were performed at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So this Metabiota been doing tests in, published a study on infectious diseases from bats in China, which notes that the tests were published at the Wuhan Institute. So they've done studies on tests at Wuhan. Shi Shengli, the Wuhan Institute director, who became dubbed as the Bat Lady for her central role in bat coronavirus research at the lab, was a contributor to the paper. Metabiota has been an official partner of EcoHealth Alliance since 2014, according to its website. So there you go. What do you think if this was, like I say, if this was Donald Trump Jr., and I am no fan of Donald Trump, got to put that out there. What do you think? Do you think this would be all over CNN and MSNBC right now? Fox is covering it. I haven't heard anybody talk about CNN, and you know they're all talking about other things right now, aren't they? Other things that superfluous. Yeah. There will be more to come on this, I'm sure. It was interesting that I heard word that there was a Danish, I think it was Danish. Somebody let me know if it's not. But there's a Danish newspaper that's come out and apologised for all of its reporting during COVID. And said, listen, we got a lot of things wrong. And the reason we got a lot of things wrong was because we were just publishing what we were told without checking. We were just putting it out there, and we were just regurgitating what the government had told us. And what we're finding out is a lot of what they've told us wasn't based in fact. And we're sorry. This needs to happen for pretty much the last 5 years of reporting, especially on anything in the media in America when it comes to Russia. There are so few people that have got the stories with regards to Russia anywhere close to correct. And it's obviously done by, it's all, of course, done by design, and it's done to keep you from the truth. It's just, it's done to keep the populace of the UK and the US in the dark. They treat you like mushrooms. They keep you in the dark and they feed you on bullshit, and this is it. You know, we need to make sure that this, they keep talking about this. And we need to make sure that these are the things that are important, not nonsense that is clearly designed to, I don't know, take your view away from what's important. Don't you agree? All right. I've no doubt that I will have to come back to that story at some stage. But as you can see, there's massive questions to be asked here, and nobody's asking them. And the journalists in front of these politicians are there because they are not going to ask these questions. Do you see what I mean? There's nobody in the White House press room right now who is capable of asking this question. There's nobody in the White House press room probably that knows anything about the story, and certainly doesn't have the knowledge of it that I have. And I'm an idiot in a council flat thousands of miles away. But they're there, and they got to the White House press room because they live in a bubble where this sort of stuff won't go in. They know that if they ask questions about this, they will get their press passes taken away and they will get cast to the side. And that's if they know. A lot of them won't have a clue. So it's up to us to put the pressure on them to keep asking these questions. You see what I mean? It's up to us to make sure that we keep on the journalists' back and make sure that they remain honest. Because sadly, unfortunately, the majority of people in the West still listen to the mainstream news. And it needs to stop. It needs to either stop, or we need to have them, well, we need to decide what's right and mainstream. Not them, not money, not corporate interest. All right. I promised I would do a video about this, and I'm going to, because I want to be, I'll try and get my point across. Okay. I have had, I'm not one of who's had, millions of interactions with the police in my time. But I've had interactions with the police, and most of the time, literally every time up until the last few years, it's been a good interaction. They've treated me very well. They've treated me with respect. Even in times when, they've had to, talk to me about stuff that's gone on. Stuff that happens in pubs and blah, 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 blah. They've always been very nice to me and cordial. The last 4 years that changed, and there's a reason for it, and that's because in the last 4 years I've come into contact with the Metropolitan Police, London. Every single interaction I have ever had with the Metropolitan Police has been a bad one. Every single one of them. And I've been on countless marches and protests in that time, and I've had countless interactions with them. There is not a march or protest that I have been on that was violent in any way at all until the police showed up. And I've covered this on plenty of videos on this channel. It's not good the way they interact with people. People are the people that they serve. They seem to forget that, though. Every interaction I've had with them has been bad. And I'm also aware that I have a white privilege when it comes to interacting with the Metropolitan Police. I'm not a 15-year-old girl, I'm a white middle-aged man. The way they act around people during protests is quite honestly despicable. I remember once when I was outside the Royal Courts of Justice, and you may remember there was a car that had been blocked out there, and I just tapped a policeman on the shoulder just to say, "Excuse me, there's a dog in the car." Got video footage, "Excuse me, a dog in the car," and he turned like, "Don't touch me." Got really aggressive with me because I said, "Excuse me, sir, there's a dog in that car." And of course, then my demeanour changes. When they are that way and they're aggressive and they go in heavy-handed and jackbooted like they do, people like me get pissed off. And then the friction starts. Every protest I've been on has been fine until the police have showed up. Let me give you an example of one. This is the Million Man March. This is 5th of November 2020. They nearly arrested me. Hi everybody, so we're here at Trafalgar Square. Now I've identified myself as a journalist, but the police don't seem to want to care about that. They've told us to move on. I've showed them my channel. I've showed the channel has got millions of views. They don't care. They've told us to move on. And they have basically said that 3 times now that if we don't move, I'm going to get arrested. Now the problem is, there's quite a few people here. As you can, honestly, that was early on. That's the sign we had. That's why we attracted attention, because we had a sign that said "Stop licking US arse." But they made a beeline for us, and I was a journalist. I'm covering it. They didn't care. See, so this is all happening right now at Trafalgar Square. So the police have come in and basically said that there is an anti-authoritarian march. They've had intel come in and they're here to break it up. So as you heard there, the police said to us there was an anti-authoritarian march and they've come to break it up. An anti-authoritarian march. So you can't march against authoritarianism now. Now, as you can see there, I'm masked up. This is the height of the COVID restriction, you know. And I wore a mask just simply to make sure that the police couldn't say that I was breaking COVID regulations. But they just made a rule up anyway. They just said, oh, it's an anti-authoritarian march. We've got to break it up. So you can't protest now anti-authoritarian policies. At least that's what it looks like. And obviously Priti Patel's bringing in a policing bill now to increase these authoritarian measures that the police have. So they're going to increase the authoritarian measures at the same time as making it illegal to protest against authoritarianism. Well, you're not living in a democracy, are you, if that's the case? If you can't protest, then you might as well be living in China or Russia. You know? I'd just like to ask the police there, and the police who are doing this, you know, when they're breaking up these marches. You saw last week with how they were acting outside the Belmarsh prison, and they turned the music down. They turned the music down. They said the music was too loud. They can do that now. Pretty soon they'll have it in legislation. Yeah, we can do that. Priti Patel said so. So you can't protest authoritarian policies. What can you protest? Well, do you remember this? Do you remember this? The Sarah Everard protest vigil? So you can't protest authoritarian policies, and seemingly you can't protest a policeman murdering and raping a woman on her way home at night either. I've covered Extinction Rebellion, where hundreds of people were arrested. Can't protest them either. Can't protest the people who are leading us into a destruction that are going to kill these police's children in the future. All of us. You know, if the Extinction Rebellion, what they're saying is right, and we're going to lead into, you know, the global warming, destruction of the planet, you can't even protest no action being done on that. You can't protest Anti-authoritarianism. You can't protest the police murdering and raping women. You can't protest the destruction of the planet and the impending doom and nothing being done about it. You certainly can't protest, Julian Assange, can you? You can't protest them throwing journalism in jail. You can't protest the authoritarian authorities throwing a journalist in jail for telling the truth about war criminals and our crimes as well as theirs. So you can't even protest people who are locking away people whose only crime is they told the truth about their crimes. You can't protest any of that. And these police are quite happy with all of those measures coming in. Oh yes, please, give us more measures. I've seen them at work. They're like dogs, the Metropolitan Police are. And they're treated like dogs as well, Get back! Get back! And this is who they're... So who, I'd like to ask the police, the Metropolitan Police specifically, are you policing and who are you serving by doing all this? By antagonising people to the point where you get a reaction, so then newspapers can be written the next day about some scuffle that was involving 4 idiots at a Palestinian protest. Pay no attention to the 200,000 other people that peacefully marched and were listening to Jeremy Corbyn speak. No, ignore all them. Print idiots, 4 idiots in a car waving a flag shouting anti-Semitic chants. And I saw that. The police couldn't instigate anything there, could they? Oh, we can't do that with politics. Oh, no. Let's just make sure that 4 idiots in a car is the story. So they're obviously working hand in hand with the media here. They must be. I've seen them rush in and I've had reports of them rushing into crowds just to create a scene so the newspapers can write their headlines the next day. It's sick. So you're doing all this, okay. You're not letting us protest. You're quite happy to go along with all these authoritarian measures coming in from this government. Now, I understand that some people will look at these pictures behind me of those protesters getting knelt on by those police officers at the Sarah Everard protest and say, oh no, that was COVID restrictions. Do you remember? That was during COVID times and they were arrested for COVID and it was different back then. Well, let's look at how the COVID restrictions then were applied. I don't know whether those COVID restrictions that you're saying, oh, it's COVID restrictions. Let's see if they were, applied equally, shall we? Oh yeah, they weren't, were they? Because while all this was going on, while the police were, cracking schools at protests, and by the way, there at that protest, I happen to know that they arrested journalists at this protest I was at, the Million Man March. They arrested journalists. They had to de-arrest them afterwards. But we left, so I didn't get arrested. They warned me 3 times, and I was live. I had to run off. So they arrested all them who were marching this anti-authoritarian march under COVID restriction. They obviously knelt on the backs of these women who were protesting, I don't know, the murder of a woman late at night by a police officer who raped her and whatever, under the guise of being a police officer. Meanwhile, while they're doing all of that, the police, the Metropolitan Police this is, breaking up any protests and doing the bidding of these people over here, they're actually working the door of number 10 as parties are going on behind them. Suitcases of beer is being brought through all the time while the Prime Minister of the country not only attended at least 3, but up to 7 of those parties, but he was making the rules up at the same time for this authoritarianism and authoritarian approach. And obviously bringing in the groundwork for the policing bill and and these more authoritarian measures. It's like a self-fulfilling philosophy that they have. Self-fulfilling prophecy, sorry, not philosophy. But this is today in the BBC, and it's talking about these the government and its lockdowns and the parties and this investigation that has gone into these parties. Because remember, everybody got, fined. I remember the story back then of when the police were obviously breaking up these protests and, like I say, kneeling on the back of people who were protesting the murder of the woman by the police officer and whatever. While they're doing that, they're working the door here. Not handing out any fines here, are they? Do you remember I heard one story of one woman who was eating her sandwich. She was eating a sandwich on a bench in a park on her lunchtime, and the police fined her, gave her a fixed penalty fine. They don't have to sign the judge off if it's a fixed penalty. The police can just issue. It's the police that can issue them. But they were doing anyway. This article in the BBC for today says this: the first fines for breaches of the COVID-19 lockdown rules as part of a police inquiry into government parties will be issued soon, the BBC has been told. So they're going to fine people. All right, okay. It's 2 years later. They were fining on the spot back then. I remember doing a story about them kicking over a barbecue of some Muslim people or black people somewhere on a council estate, kicked over a barbecue. But they were working the door for a party at Downing Street. The Metropolitan Police will issue at least 15 fixed penalty fines initially and could start on Tuesday, Westminster sources suggest. Right, listen to this. The investigation of 12 events held across government began January. So there's been investigation since January into this. All right, January, February, March. 3-month investigation, right? For these 12 events. It came after an internal inquiry passed information to the force. The Guardian said fines were imminent. Downing Street and the Met have not commented, but government sources told the BBC officers could be about to begin issuing the fines. So they're going to fine people. For months, Boris Johnson and his government were dogged by reports of staff parties in Downing Street when COVID restrictions were in place. Yes, of course they were. And what did they do? They were totally and utterly ambiguous with what they said, so you couldn't nail them down on anything. Or, in many cases, they were like, no, there were no parties. What are you talking about? No parties at all. Several Conservative MPs had called for Mr Johnson to resign over the parties, but some have changed their stance in recent weeks since the war in Ukraine started. Interesting. Education Minister Will Quince told Radio 4's Today Problem the events that took place shouldn't have happened. Really? They happened in the house of the person that was making the rules. And added that there had been considerable change in Downing Street since the revelations of lockdown events. What change? Certainly not personnel, is it? Listen to Laura Kunsberg here. They just flopped Laura Kunsberg in the middle of this article. Because she's got the new job of Andrew Marr, so she gets her say. And she says, quite rightly, the war in Ukraine has been sucking up much of the government's and parliament's focus in recent weeks. All right. You may agree with that quite rightly the war has been sucking up. Kind of, yeah, okay, there's a war. What about the war in Yemen? Why hasn't that been sucking up much of the government's time? Because that's been going on nearly 8 years, and we actually support that one. We sell the weapons and the bombs and train the pilots, and why hasn't that been sucking up such much of the government's time, Laura? Why aren't you focusing on that? Anyway, the police investigation was launched. The BBC say this. The police investigation was launched after a separate inquiry was undertaken by civil servant Sue Gray. No, the police investigation was launched after the public found out these parties were going on, after they had lied about them, constantly saying, no, it didn't happen, and if any gatherings did take place, then they were within the regulations, when we know that they couldn't be. The investigation was launched after a public outcry. Not because of a separate inquiry by Sue Gray, because of a public outcry. There may have been a separate inquiry from Sue Gray, and of course there was, but it wasn't because of that. The initial findings of Mrs. Gray's inquiry criticised failures of leadership and judgment over the gatherings. It's really nice wording, this is, isn't it? They've failures of leadership and judgment. Miss Gray's inquiry criticised failures of leadership and judgment. These people were making up the rules. They were getting their police force, their hired thugs in the police to enforce these rules in a draconian and over-authoritarian way. I saw it with my own eyes. And whilst at the same time they were making up these rules and getting the police to do it, to come down on us, they were partying in Downing Street while the police did the security for them. How about you criticise that? Criticise failures of leadership and judgment. The Prime Minister told Conservative MPs that an updated version of the Gray report will be published in full once the police have finished their investigation. How long will that take then? It's 3 months already. Of the 16 gatherings held in the... Look at that. Investigation of... They were investigating 12 events, right? But there were 16 events. Of the 16 gatherings listed in her initial findings, the police are investigating all but 4 of them. Why? Why aren't they investigating the other 4? They don't say this, I don't, in the article. At various stages during the pandemic, the government has imposed legally enforceable rules, including restrictions on social gatherings, to stop COVID from spreading to save lives. It doesn't say. Why aren't the police investigating those other 4 gatherings? Because it goes on to say Mr. Johnson is known to have attended at least 3 of the gatherings that he said that didn't happen, and then said rules weren't broken, and then said, oh, it was a meeting. And but he could have, if there were another 4, he could have attended the other 4. So he could have attended 7. There was a police inquiry called Operation Hillman, by the way, that examined 12 dates. So this is a 3-month investigation that's gone on with all sorts of officers and Sue Gray involved. I'm assuming Sue Gray gets paid quite well. He has said he did not believe he was breaking any rules, but apologised for the things that we simply did not get right. You made the rules and then you blatantly disregarded them to have a party, you tosser. Last week, Conservative co-chairman Oliver Dowden told LBC that Mr. Johnson was confident he did not break the law. I'm confident that Mr. Johnson is a lying git, and I'm sure you all are too. The police said a fine, known as a fixed penalty notice, would be issued to anyone for having found breached the COVID regulations. The Met said it would contact people believed to have been taking part in the events in question to get their accounts. The force had sent questionnaires to dozens of staff members in this investigation, and officers have been supplied with more than 300 photographs and 500 pages of material from the inquiry led by Miss Gray. The force said the questionnaires that were sent out have a formal legal status, and they needed to be responded to. So all of this has gone on. 500 pages of material, 300 photographs, loads of police involved, Sue Gray's report, 2 investigations. Mr. Johnson returned his questionnaire. Downing Street has said that the answers would not be made... What? But Downing Street has said that his answers would not be made public. Okay, why the hell not? He has, however, said that he would tell the public if he received a fine. Right, so all that's going to happen here, okay? All that's going to happen here is up to 15 people are going to be fined. Let me just read the last bit of this article and then I'll come to my point. All right? And there is a big point here I'd like to make if you haven't seen it already. For those who do receive a fine, they will face no further action if they pay the fine on time. You can bet your ass they will do. The Met has said that if they decide to dispute the fine, officers will consider whether to pursue the matter in court, so they could be disputed. The Force has said it will reveal the number of fixed penalty notices it issues. They think it's going to be 15 as a result of these parties that the police did security for at the door, for Christ's sake. In a statement on 21st of March, the Met said it had begun to interview people as witnesses, but it had not yet issued any fixed penalty notice. To date, over 100 questionnaires have been sent. Right, okay. So, I want you to think about this, right? Let me just put this on the back. I want you to think about this. So while they're doing this, the police, while they're handing out fixed penalty fines here at these protests, right? And while they're basically arresting journalists and arresting women who are protesting a police officer kidnapping, raping and murdering a woman on her way home during these COVID restrictions that had come in. While this is happening, they are doing the door for these parties, for up to 16 parties at Downing Street or these places. Okay, so think about this. These people are public servants, okay? So the people who pay them are us. They are answerable to us. So we pay their wages. So while all this is going on, while they're having parties at Downing Street, they're getting paid by us. Whilst the police, outside the door at 10 Downing Street are doing the door, the security for these illegal parties that are going on inside the Prime Minister's private residence, who is getting paid by us, the police are getting paid by us as well. Okay? While they were arresting journalists and while they were arresting protesters protesting self-Everard, they were getting paid by us too. We were paying for it all. We were also paying, if you think about it, because the booze was probably going to be on expenses, we probably paid for the booze at the parties as well. Weren't we? We probably paid for that. It's bound to be on expenses, wasn't it? So we paid their wages while they were partying. We paid for the party itself. We paid for the security. All while they're arresting us and telling us we can't go out or do anything or meet anybody in our own home. Who are the police policing here? And who paid for all this? I'd like to point out that not only did we pay for all of the stuff that went on then, of course, this investigation is 3 months long already. Who do you think's paying for that? Us. We're paying for it. Not them. Not the people. We're paying for it. They're saying that there's going to be 15 fines. Now, if memory serves me correct, the maximum fine at the time was £10,000, and that was only if really you were a host of a party or a business, right? So, but even if they fined 15 people at that party, including the Prime Minister, the maximum amount, £10,000, it wouldn't even cover the cost of policing the goddamn parties in the first place, which we pay for. And by the way, when these 15 people pay their fucking fines, I can't believe I'm going to say that, where do you think that money is going to come from? Us. Right? So the fines that they're going to pay for the crimes that they did back then, when the police were literally arresting us and giving us a fine for eating a sandwich on a bench, we're going to end up paying for it all. All of it. And the Prime Minister, through all of this, will have not only remained in his post, despite the fact that he's pretty much lied all the way through it, but here he is talking. I'm not going to play it. It's going to drive me so mad. But they don't answer questions. These people don't either. For those who Let me play it. Says the Prime Minister has faced a string of allegations about parties holding down street. Listen.
A work event. But Mr. Speaker, with hindsight, I should have sent everyone back inside. I should have found some other way to thank them.
I should have done this, I should have done that. Okay. Where's your apology, mate? Where's your apology for what you did? They won't even apologise, these people. Listen.
We have answered, Mr. Speaker, that it is for the inquiry to come forward with an explanation of what happened, and I'm afraid he's...
So it's for an inquiry. Back then he was all like, let's wait for the inquiry. So he knows all that's going to come out of the inquiry is these fines. He knows they're just going to get fined. He's going to tell the public if he gets a fine. He's going to pay it out of his own money, which we pay for. Everything that went on is going to be footed by us. Every single thing that has gone on with regards to that, this whole thing, the bill is resting on us. They're going to get away with this scot-free. Not a single thing is going to change, and the Metropolitan Police are, if we let them, going to continue with this authoritarian turn. Because let's face it, these are the people who they're protecting now, aren't they, the police? Can't you see it now? Can't you see the police when I say who are they policing? They're not policing really anybody. They're policing, apart from us, they're policing us for sure. But they're the police. The police should be coming to us saying, how would you like us to police you? Because they're our police force. They're not Boris Johnson's. They're not the politicians. But that's what they're being used for now, isn't it? They're being used for as literally hired thugs to go in and do whatever's needed to get whatever story they need printed in the papers the next day, to get the focus of whatever the government doesn't like, and to basically do anything the government wants them to do. Let's face it, even if that means trampling into a foreign soil and coming up with, even if that means pretty much bribing and forcing a foreign nation to give up a journalist and let another force come into their own sovereignty, to drag a journalist out of his political asylum. They'll do that. Why? Because Boris Johnson and Power told them to, didn't it? Boris Johnson told them to go in and arrest... No, it wasn't Boris Johnson back then, it's Theresa May, but still, arrest him. Arrest that man. Arrest that journalist who told the truth about us. Has he committed any crime? No. Not in this country. Not at all. He's been in Belmarsh for over 1,000 days, though. And if the police were asked tomorrow to go and arrest him again, they would do it again. They won't do a goddamn thing for you and me, though, will they? They won't investigate if one of our wives or one of our sisters or one of our mothers or our husbands or brothers get raped, will they? What actually are you spending your time doing here, Metropolitan Police? Actually, when you think about it, what are you spending your time doing? Because I see you policing protests. I see thousands of you out there sometimes policing peaceful protests where the only reason really for you to be there is to cause trouble if ever the government want you to. But you don't seem to be very good at solving rapes, do you? Shall I tell you what you are good at doing now? You're good at sending out speeding fines, aren't you? Eh? Speeding tickets costing drivers £600,000 a day as fines skyrocket 40% in 10 years. 40%. They are fining you now if you go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. We pay your wages. We do. We're your bosses. The people of this country. You're meant to serve us. You're meant to keep us safe. Not Power. Not corrupt, evil pedophiles. Why are you protecting pedophiles? Why? Why are you spending all your time policing protests and protecting power instead of catching rapists and murderers and pedophiles? Why is your focus on catching people speeding? I heard a story today. They're going to start in London putting cameras on top of pedestrian crossings. So even if somebody stops at a pedestrian crossing and looks down and checks their phone, 6 points. So they'll give us a fixed penalty notice if a camera catches us doing something slightly wrong. But meanwhile, if the Prime Minister wants to have a shindig at number 10, invite all his mates round, with it being totally illegal during COVID restrictions, you'll do the goddamn security. The police force in this country, I don't know what has happened over the years, but I'm pretty sure by now that they understand we don't trust them. At least the Metropolitan Police. We don't trust them. And it's because of stuff like this. And yes, speeding's bad, but come on. 1 mile an hour over? This is a fundraiser. This is a fundraiser. And do you know why you're having to do this, by the way? Do you know why the police are having to, fine people for going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit and to bump up their bump it up to £600,000 a day? Because they're not getting funded properly by the very people that they're doing security for and protecting. So they're having to do stuff like this. Who benefits from these things? Who? Is it making anybody safer? Have a look, shall we? This article from Palmer Solicitors. Speed cameras, he says, always a controversial subject and long thought of as being a method to which extrapolate cash from motorists for the benefit of the police. So when the news broke about plans to fine motorists for travelling as little as 1 mile an hour over the speed limit as a means to raise funds for cash-strapped police forces, Downing Street stepped in to confirm that revenue from speeding fines would not go to the police. Oh, isn't that? So it's not going to. Where's it going then? The Police and Crime Commissioner, Ollie Martins, has proposed to permanently switch on the variable speed cameras on the M1 motorway in an attempt to help Bedfordshire Police cope with reduced funding. However, the government said that speed cameras are not income generators and revenue from the offences that would not go for police directly. Can you imagine what's going to happen here to any police officers that's actually still watching this? If you are, fair play to you. But can you imagine what's going to happen? So you're policing us like this. You're arresting journalists. You're arresting protesters who are protesting a police officer killing and murdering one of them. You're doing the security for the people who are making up these rules and then breaking them willy-nilly. You're getting paid for all of this. And then as a shortfall, you're like, okay, we'll increase the speeding. And then the government, who you're doing, well, security for, are saying, no, you can't do it that way, mate. I know we've cut your funding. I know you're not getting a pay rise, but we're getting a pay rise. Don't you worry about that. But yeah, you're not going to get the money from that either. So where's that going, do you think? Well, if it's not going to the police, I'd suggest it's probably going to the government as well for them not to give you. But for you police officers, you need to understand something. If they will do this stuff like this, and they'll do it to us, they'll do it to you too. And you know how they said you couldn't have the money from the speed cameras? Imagine if they suddenly told you that you couldn't have the money from, I don't know, your pensions. Because I'm telling you something, those people that you're doing security for right now and protecting, if the time comes and losing your pensions is a viable option to them and they think they can get away with it, they'll throw you under the bus so quick. And you know what I just said is true. Other police forces around the country don't act the way the Metropolitan Police does. Now, I understand that they have to deal with a lot of stuff down there. There's a lot of stabbings and what have you, but I think this is feeding it almost. This distrust in the police. You've lost it. You've lost all trust from the people. If I had kids and my kids said to me, Daddy, what should I do if ever I'm lost? I mean, when I was a kid, the answer was find a police officer. I wouldn't say that if I was in London to them. I'd just say find a stranger. Police officer find you. You could end up in Argentina or Portugal in somebody's villa. It really is that bad. You don't treat people that you are supposed to serve like humans. I've never seen it from any of you, ever. Certainly not in the last 5 years since I've been dealing with the Metropolitan Police in London. Let me know what you think underneath the comments about this. Let me know if you've ever had a good interactions with the Metropolitan Police, because I haven't. I just haven't. And I want to know whether it's just me. I'm white as well, remember? And yeah, I know people are like, oh, racism. Listen, remember that 15-year-old girl? Oh yeah, that's something that the police were doing, by the way. While they were doing all this, while they were arresting journalists who were covering marches, and while they were arresting women who were protesting the police murdering women and raping them on the way home, and while they're doing, security for Downing Street, as it breaks all of these parties willy-nilly, which, any fines we're going to end up footing the bill for anyway, and then certainly foot the bill for the investigation. And there's no way those fines will even cover the cost of the investigation. Will it? Because you know that even if they get £10,000 fines, all 15 of them, that's not going to cover the cost of policing, of just the manpower with thousands of questionnaires going out. It's not going to cover that. This is a whole giant waste of time where nobody is going to get held accountable for anything. And the Metropolitan Police are going to go, yeah, we did a good job there. Are you kidding me? While you're doing all of this, you're getting called into a school. Strip searching a 15-year-old girl because somebody said that she smelled of weed. She was on her period during this same time. This is 2 years ago. You're strip searching a 15-year-old girl on her 15-year-old black girl, by the way, on her period. And people say, "Oh no, you're just bringing that." Listen, the report said race was a factor. 30% of strip searches are black. Only 13% of the population are. Do the math. That's racism. So while this is going on, you're arresting journalists who are covering an anti-authoritarian protest. You're arresting protesters who are protesting the Metropolitan Police murdering and raping a woman on her way home during COVID restrictions. You're doing security at number 10 whilst it parties all the way through this, and you're strip searching black girls on their period because somebody said they smell of weed. Are you kidding me? And besides which, even if she was, it's a frigging plant. Have you ever been in the vicinity of me? If you've came within a yard of me and walked off, congratulations, you smell of weed. Because I stink of it. I've had people on marches come up, "Can you smell weed somewhere?" It's like, yeah, it's me, mate. I stink. It's a plant. Stripped her down naked, 15 years old on her period. Wouldn't even let her put a clean sanitary towel on afterwards. Made her put the dirty... Oh, you disgusting bastards. Can't you see why people have lost trust in the Metropolitan Police? Can't you see it? Getting rid of Cressida Dick won't do dick. You need to remember you work for us. The corrupt criminals are behind you. They're the ones who are going to steal your pension as soon as they get a fucking chance. Turn around. Start looking at the people paying your wages. Start looking at the people who are locking up journalists in Belmarsh for no crime whatsoever. Start looking at the people who are making rules while flagrantly breaking them and not giving a shit about anybody else. Maybe then the public and the people in this country will actually start giving you some respect back. Because I guarantee you this, whenever I come in contact with the Metropolitan Police from this point on, it's going to be as a place of fear. This person is my fucking enemy. That's how much you have pissed off law-abiding fucking public here. That's how much you have lost trust. Fining the fucking Prime Minister is not going to change a damn thing. We're the ones who are going to pay the fucking fine. Just like we pay your wages. The whole thing needs total reform. Total reform. What you're doing is disgusting. And it's not police, that's for sure. It's not police. What you're doing is not police. I don't necessarily know what policing is, but I think policing is something quite good for the community. What you're doing is not. You're protecting power. You're nothing more than hired thugs to the elite. And I, for one, have lost all faith that you will ever reform, because I can't see any of it happening. Firing somebody at the top isn't going to do jack shit. Look at what you're doing. At the same time this is all happening, you're arresting journalists, you're arresting protesters who protesting one of your own killing a woman and raping her on the way home, while you're doing fucking security for people who are flagrantly breaking rules, whilst dishing out fines willy-nilly to everybody else in the country, whilst at the same time strip searching 15-year-old black girls naked because they fucking smell a weed, or because allegedly they do. She may have just walked past somebody like me in the street. And even if she did, it's a plant. Half of the House of Commons are snorting coke up their nose. All right. I didn't want to get animated today. I really didn't. I don't know why. I was like, I'm going to be calm today. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be calm. I'm not going to lose my shit. But when you're talking about this, how can you not get angry? How can you not get upset at all this? How can you not get upset at the police force doing this? Well, the media are saying, oh, there's these fines and justice is going to be served here. Who the fuck is going to pay for it? Who? We are. This isn't justice. This isn't fair. This isn't a fair society. This is a police force that's been turned into hired thugs for the aristocracy. Isn't there a way that we can just, I don't know, start our own fucking police force? And just say, to hell with you, this is our police force now. We don't need you. Isn't there a way we can do that? And start coming together in our own communities and going, you know what, fuck these guys, let's do it ourselves. Because they're clearly they're not doing anything in our best interests, are they? Clearly. They're keeping us all in our own little bubbles, making sure that, oh, can't listen to what Gordon's saying. For God's sake, don't listen to what Gordon's saying. His words, he speaks the truth, and that's dangerous. Making sure that, you know, I can't infect people's ears. And people like me. You can only have official lines of propaganda from the telly box in the corner. Official lines that, you know, doing interviews with Boris Johnson and let him get away with saying stuff like this.
He simply must wait.
The Prime Minister was asked about two parties by number 10 staff the night before the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. Here he is. He's hanging his head, looking solemn. You've probably seen this, remember? shaking his head. This is an act.
To the Queen about those parties the night before she put her husband of over 70 years, she laid him to rest. Was that a moment of shame for
Listen to his answer here. Listen to the words.
you?
I deeply and bitterly regret
I deeply and bitterly regret.
that happened.
I deeply and bitterly regret that happened. That is not something that somebody says who is remorseful. A killer, somebody who has killed somebody who killed Jamal Khashoggi and chopped him up in the embassy. By the way, we're still friends with the Saudis. Who knew? He could say, I deeply regret that happened. Doesn't mean a goddamn thing, does it? Doesn't mean he's sorry for it. I deeply regret that happened. No, that could be, I deeply regret that happened. I got caught. Listen to his next line.
And I can only,
apologise. No.
and renew my apologies both to Her Majesty and
Renew my apologies to Her Majesty.
to the country.
To the country.
For misjudgments that
For misjudgments.
were made and for which I take full responsibility.
For misjudgments of which he takes not, these crimes that were committed in my house. He's gone from the parties didn't happen to if they happened, I wasn't aware of them, to, well, if they happened, they were doing and all regulations were followed. Well, they did happen and I wasn't in them. I wasn't in any of them. To, well, there were actually 16 of them, 12 of them were investigated and I was in 3 and I could have been in 7. This is this. And I want you to pay very good attention to this because this is double speak, or as Orwell called it, new speak. You say stuff, but you don't actually say anything. You certainly don't answer any questions. And you certainly don't say anything that's anything meaningful. And then the media, if you get the media in on it, and you only have a tiny group of people owning all of the media that we have now, you can make sure that people in positions who to ask the Prime Minister questions are the people who are not going to push back and say the sort of things that I say, or you would say, or any of us. This is double speak. It's a language that deliberately obscures, disguises, distorts, or even reverses the meaning of words. You see it quite often with stuff in America, Torture became enhanced interrogation. You're hearing it right now. We're not sending missiles to Ukraine. No. We're sending lethal aid. It's doublespeak. It's saying words you can very carefully in a way that you can't quite catch you out in a lie, but you're not really saying anything truthful either. And this is all politicians do now. And it's time for them all to go and for us to start governing ourselves. Because these people are not fit for purpose. To quote Chris Hedges' speech last week when he was invoking the House of, the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. Figuratively speaking, I think, off with their heads. Let me know what you think about this. This is another thing, I think Titcher's just said it, gaslighting. This is what it is. This is all now you're getting through the media. If you're getting your information from the BBC, they're giving you half a story. Not even half. They're giving you a percentage of it. They're giving whatever they can to sort of get away with and keep you all misinformed and almost incapable of gathering with each other and talking about these things and coming together, because they know the minute that we do, it's over for them. There are way more of us than they are of them. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think I'm done. I think that's it, isn't it? How long have we gone? I lost any... dropped 375 frames. Right. I don't think there was any super chats, was there? Okay, thank you everybody. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks for everybody for sharing this. Please share it as widely as you can. Go through to my website. Make sure that you're subscribed on any of the channels as well. Go to this website. Sign up to my mailing list. If you're on the mailing list, you would have got a notification by email that I was going live. So you won't miss any future live shows that I do if you're on that mailing list. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Bit of quiet news. There's bound to be something coming up in the next few days, isn't there? I know it's quite quiet in the news right now, but yeah, I'm sure there's bound to be loads to talk about. So, for instance, the French president telling a Russian magazine that they shouldn't have printed. Got to get into this story. It's quite, yeah, it's quite hypocritical. Thanks very much. Please support independent media. You all know the avenues. Go to the Grey Zone. Go to Jimmy Dore. Go to, in this country, go to Joanne. Go to the independent sources that I've suggested in other videos. And they're the ones that are telling you the truth. Thanks very much, everybody. I shall see you soon. Take care. Bye. You knew. You knew I was finishing. Take care, everybody.